Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of An Author's Kiss, right here on self-discoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Cathy Derksen. She has written quite a number of books. She's also been collaborative in 10 books. We're going to be talking a lot about her books today, but we're also going to be talking about bring life back to your life. And I'm sure you relate. Somehow we carry on living, but are we living? We're just surviving. We're going through the motions, and somehow we turn around and look at it and go, where did my life go? Where did it go? Did I follow what I wanted to do? Did I live up to everything I wanted to do? And very often the answer is no. She says, after working in medical genetics for 25 years and 10 years in the financial planning business, she decided to start her own business and create a global impact. She supports midlife women to rediscover their brilliance and step into the new possibilities in their lives. She offers platforms for women to clarify and share their journey through collaborative book projects and building community, creating a ripple effect of impact through sharing their stories of wisdom. We're all about that here on Self-Discovery Wisdom. Wisdom is good. And she said, if you've been feeling stuck and experiencing procrastination, self-doubt, depletion, or generally feeling uninspired, unmotivated about your future, you're not alone, as so many feel this way. She is the founder of her company, Inspired Tenacity. She's dedicated to improving the lives of women in her community and around the world. She's an international speaker, a 10 times #1 bestseller, stories that inspire readers to take that leap of faith into reaching their big goals. She created a platform to support women, and this is what she is doing and loving every minute of it. And I think when we get there to support people and really actually help people share their story, we see so much of our own lives and other people's stories, don't we? And we realize that although we may have taken a different path and done things in a different way, there's so much commonality to our journeys in life. And that, when somebody fell down, didn't know how to get back up, and they listened to someone else who got back up, and it's like, how did you do that? Tell me, share. And it helps other people get back up and go. So this is the reason why books and collaborative books and all of this is so important, because those stories are so important to our own individual lives. Welcome to the show, Han.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to have a chat about all things books and life and reigniting our life. And yes, I completely agree with you that stories, they help us to clarify our own story as we're writing, but then they are so important for giving other people that message and that example and that support to lift them.
And I'm sure you get from an awful lot of people, well, my life is boring. I mean, who wants to hear my story? And we don't realize it is that everyday story that really is the one that sparks the most in us. It's not the people who've done the huge, big, grand things. Kudos to them. Wonderful. They're an inspiration in their own right. But it's those people that have taken the everyday journey and the bumps and the grinds or the Grand Canyons that they've had in their lives. And those are the ones that we really relate to, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. The ones that you can see yourself in, the ones you can see your own journey reflected in their journey. It's definitely the ones that we connect the most with. And I think that's been what I've really been focusing on so much in my book projects is giving women that platform to share those stories on that level,
Yeah.
because that is what helps us to see other possibilities. When we can see someone we relate with
Yeah.
doing something that we had an inkling that maybe I'd like to do that too, that
Or
gives us
thought
that
we never
extra.
could do it, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It gives us that little thing of, oh yeah, maybe I can do
hmm
that too.
I would say that, suffering is a choice. Struggle is something we all go through. Change is something that's inevitable. And, bumps in the road. And, I was listening to Trevor Noah with Jay Shetty the other day, and he said, like, just because we go through the experience doesn't mean we actually enjoy it. But what we do come out of it with is a sense of resilience, a tenacity, an ability, a sense of strength and courage that we didn't have before. So that is how it serves us, is how we get through it out the other side. It doesn't mean you enjoyed your experience, but it is the experience was to reveal who and what
Yes.
you really are.
And that's actually where the name of my company
Hmm.
came from. That came to me, inspired tenacity.
Hmm.
To me, inspiration and tenacity
Yeah.
are two of the core things we need to make big changes in our life. And those
Yeah.
words together just to me went,
Yes, exactly. And I love it when things come together like that because then they're meant to be. That tenacity, that oomph, I don't know why I keep going. I don't know why I keep getting back up. None of it makes sense. All I know, I've got to get back up and keep going. And then, as you do and as you allow, things get revealed, and then you go, okay, now I get it. But we have to be willing to just go on that journey, allow, take the experience. We don't have a manual, we don't have next step, next step. It is about just journeying in life, immersing ourselves in it, both good and bad, and then allowing it to reveal itself to us. Because that's really where the excitement is, isn't it?
and that's part of it too, that being open to seeing what
Mm,
gets revealed.
yeah.
Because I think that's part of what differentiates people that embrace change
Hmm.
versus those that feel overwhelmed by it. If we're
Yes.
open to those changes and open to those new opportunities, it becomes more of an adventure instead of just a challenge that we didn't want to face.
Mm. Well, we say resistance is futile, and that's a Star Trek thing, right? No, and it is because I don't care if you don't want to change. Everything is changing around you. At some point, you're going to find yourself changing with it, whether you like it or not. So, but if you decide to kind of, you know, this change is inevitable, how can I make the best out of it? How can I go with it and have it make the best out of it for me instead of resisting? It takes more energy to resist than to go with the flow, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I think the more that we actually do embrace that and go with that flow, that we find ourselves in places that we never imagined
Mm.
before.
Exciting too. Like, I never knew
Exactly.
I could
And
be a
here we are.
podcaster. Exactly. That's why I think kind of I've always been one to just go and try. If the gut says go, I go. All right. And
Yes.
I BS'd my way into a lot of jobs and had no idea what I was getting myself into. And it either worked or it didn't work. But I realized that, I've just written my memoir and kind of looking at, you look at threads that are in each chapter and you go, very interesting. But the thread was that it didn't matter what I was doing. It always was about customer service, right? And if you're out there paying attention to the customer and you're giving them the service that they need, it isn't on the PhD you have on the service if you don't connect to the customer.
Yes, very good point. And my thread was being of service to women,
Hmm.
to help them change their life
Right.
for the better in a
Hmm.
massive way.
Yeah.
And I started that journey over a decade ago. And like you say, follow your gut, listen
Yeah.
to your intuition, let the
Yeah.
changes come, figure out where you end up. And this is where I've ended up, and
Hmm.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah, when you get that point, as I said, I started podcasting over 11 years ago, and I did it live for 13 months and pushed all the wrong buttons on the first show. And it was a training ground. I call it the soap opera training ground. And then I started my own network and had no idea what I was doing because there was so few out there to template from. And it was, as I learned, I evolved. And here I am 3,000 shows later, and I'm getting to meet wonderful people like you, and I get to meet people all around the world, which is absolutely fabulous. Hearing their stories, hearing their strength, their courage, their who they've stepped into from even the most darkest of days. It is just so illuminating and so exciting. And When you watch the news, we're all going to hell in a handbasket very quickly. But when you
Yes.
talk to people or you read the story or you're willing to listen to someone's story, you realize
Yeah.
we're pretty awesome when we choose to be.
Yes. And if you look around the world, you actually see more common
Yeah.
things in common than differences. But
Yes.
again, going back to the news and what you actually hear about, you hear about the differences and what tears us apart and
Yeah.
what we're fighting about. Well, how about we switch that around and let's start looking at what our common ground is, what we're doing together, what we are all, so many of us working on contributing to a
Mm.
better world. There's so many amazing stories.
Yeah. And you've said a magic word, contributing. We are all here to contribute. You know, I was saying in a big corporation, the janitor is just as important as the CEO. If he hasn't set the stage and the place isn't clean and pristine, as people walk into that building, and it's dirty and it's tardy and it's sticky, then their impression of the CEO has changed completely,
Oh,
right?
definitely.
So, it's your importance isn't gauged or measured by somebody else that you've put on a pedestal. Your importance is, are you celebrating your own life and your own contribution and enjoying doing it?
Yes. And have you found what's your thing?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, one of my favorite quotes is from Howard Thurman, and it's the don't ask what the world needs,
Mm,
but ask what makes you come alive and go do that.
yes.
Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to me, that hit home so hard when I read that the first time. I thought, oh my God, that is so true. We need to come alive and help each other come alive instead of this stuck and numbness that
Yes.
so many of us are kind of just immersed in.
I say inspiration begets invitation. And, you were inspired by that quote and it invited you to do something about it. And you never know where that inspiration is going to come from. I find sometimes if I'm a bit down or, as an empath depressant, when I listen too much to the sorrows of the world or pick it up, it can get me down. Then I go and watch YouTube or some things on Facebook where people are rescuing people, doing kind acts, making people smile. And then it reminds me of just how awesome we really can be and who we really are at the core of our center. But it's all a question, are we influenced by all this static and societal imposition, imposing upon us of what we should be? Or are we truly taking that journey, investing ourselves and discovering who we really are?
Yes, that is the huge part, to really have that internal discovery.
Mm.
Eyes wide open.
And also head closed, mind closed. Because I think if you are eyes wide open and the dialogue is still going, it'll have those eyes shut so quickly. But if the eyes are wide open and you're willing to listen to the other intellect that you were born with, that intellect is the heart and the soul and the spirit's intellect, and you're willing to listen to that, willing to feel the knowledge, then the head has the right information in which to take action on. But if you're only thinking from the chin up, you're going to be, well, what if it isn't this? Or what if they don't like me? Or what if that? What if that? And you'll talk yourself out of it so fast.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yes, erasing all that internal chatter. I just keep
Easier said than
thinking,
done, but you've got to
yes,
work on it, right? You have to be willing to work on it.
yes, and it seems like I'm not sure whether it's actually become a bigger issue or whether people are just talking about it more.
Mm,
This whole idea of that internal
yes.
chatter and the way we seem to naturally talk to each other or to ourselves in that
Mm,
negative way,
mm.
and switching that around. But you're right, we have to make a conscious decision to look at those, hear them, set them aside, and replace them with something else.
Consistently. You've got
Yes,
to remember
yes.
that the pattern that's in your memory bank, that is your programming, it's been there for a very long time. Not just this lifetime, your ancestral blood, maybe past life, it's been ingrained for a very long time. It isn't, oh, I'm going to say this to me and then that's it. It is, you've got to consistently change the message. I say if you seeds are weeds, that's what's going to grow. If the seeds are something that's going to bloom into something that's going to make your heart flow, be careful what you seed, but don't forget to water and nurture it. And that means the dialogue that you speak to yourself with.
And what you expose yourself to,
Oh, yes.
as far as the news
Negative
and
people.
what you're reading,
Like
what you're
vultures.
watching.
Yes, yes. Yes, because it all has an impact on your psyche. So you can't say one thing and be doing another, right? And it's especially when I say, I used to in my coaching draw the analogy of a ruler of 12 inches. Sorry, I'm old-fashioned and British. I don't do metric. And your 6 to your 12 where people had already stepped into the higher elevation of positive consciousness. And your 4, 5 where people are in that self-discovery of raising their frequency and taking that journey. But your 1, 2, and 3 were the vultures, were the piranhas that live on being miserable, live on the hate, live on the negativity. And so they capture those 4 and 5s as their energy grows and sucks the life back out of them. So when we are wanting and making a conscious decision that we are going to be the conductors of our own life, we are going to change whom we interact with, what we're going to see, what we're going to do, what we're going to say, we have to make sure we're not around the piranhas because they're ready to pounce.
Very, very true. Yes.
And
And I
that
think
means immersing yourself in good books.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Good books, good
Mhm.
podcasts, good YouTube, funny
Positive people.
TikToks.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I think there's something else that we've lost a great deal of is that art of laughter, silly laughter. Just laughing for a good laugh.
Just
Uh,
that belly laugh.
yeah. When was the last time you had a good belly laugh, folks? And it's good for our health. It's good for us. But we've really taken everything so seriously, haven't we?
Yes, and it almost seems like since COVID kind of brought
Mm,
everything down, it seems like we're having trouble breaking back out of that.
yes. There is no ceiling there, folks. Whatever film you've put there, you've put there. So it comes down to choice, doesn't it?
Yes. But first, there has to be that awareness.
Hmm.
You have to notice that you're in that. And I think that's a big part of what differentiates people that are stuck in those twos and threes that you were just
Hmm.
referring to, that most of them are oblivious to the fact that they put themselves in this bubble and that there's a different option.
Right. They're actually happy being miserable because it
That's
becomes
all
an
they know.
excuse. It's all they know, but it's also and abstaining from any responsibility. Because when you're in that 1, 2, and 3, you're blaming everybody else around you, and it's never your fault. You've never done anything. And when you're there, then if you're not taking any accountability or responsibility for your own choices, and someone then makes choices for you, quit complaining.
Yes, get making your own decisions.
Yes. And I know for some people it's hard at first because they've been so conditioned by other people's telling them what to do, what to say, what to be. And, I know that when I realized I was bending myself into a pretzel to be what everybody else wanted me to be, and realized nobody wanted me to be the same thing. And so I was kind of felt like I was fractured into so many pieces, trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be. And then it was like, well, who the hell is Sarah? Right.
Exactly. And I think especially for midlife women,
Yeah.
that this becomes a huge issue that so many of us face because we have spent decades doing exactly what you described.
Yeah.
We're one way with the kids, we're another way with our husband, we're another way with our employer, we're another way with all the volunteer work that we've been doing and the other projects that we've been working on, and we've literally lost track of who we are or what we like. And I still remember one day when my kids were little, it's just suddenly hit me that I couldn't even remember what kind of music I liked or what kind of
Mm,
food I wanted. So if I was going to decide for myself, what would I have chosen?
yes.
Because it had for so long been like, okay, let them choose. We'll
Hmm.
do what they want, keep everybody happy, don't rock the boat.
Hmm. And then you end up with spoiled brats who think the world revolves around them. And
Oh, we
there
won't
we
go
have
there.
another story. Yeah, it serves no one. It certainly doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve your relationship with your husband because again, you're not the woman I married. No, you're not. You know, you've become everybody else's servant. Where is the time for you? But you're also not setting a good example for your children because
Yes,
they're going to think everybody is always going to be there to serve them, or when they marry, they're going to have to be of service at the sacrifice of themselves.
yes.
So it's not a good place to be.
No, no. We learn that with experience.
We do. But you know, one of the thing about good books and people sharing these stories, you don't have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 to go, oh God, why didn't I know this earlier? We can have the younger generation read this and avoid the pitfalls. That's the whole reason for
Yes,
people sharing their
yes,
stories, right?
yes, exactly. And I do find that they are very helpful
Mm,
for them, the younger ones coming up and just seeing the example and the what the older generation are saying about their own experience and
mm.
what they would have done differently or what
Yeah.
they are doing differently now. And I think that there is a big difference with say the younger people in their late 20s, early 30s. I think the way they're approaching life and the way they are putting their own needs into perspective, I think is a different model than the way we grew up.
I mean, I have three kids and only one with two babies, just had one. My son is contemplating whether to or not. He turns 39 this year. I have a 40-year-old daughter and says no. And I have friends with kids, none of them are having kids. And it's like it's more of a trend to not have. Because let's face it, we're looking at economically today, it costs a lot to raise a child, and the expense of living is so high.
Oh, yes.
And it's not like it was nowadays, you know, the village of helping, you know, it's different. And also a lot of people go, "Well, you know, I enjoy my career, or I prefer with my spouse to go away on holiday or do things, or get a dog, you know,
Yes.
less work." Um, and so choices have changed. And where I think people are saying, I don't want to end up like my mother.
Yes, and setting their own priorities. And yeah, I would say that when I was in my late 20s, that it was really just expected that
Mm,
that the kids would be the next thing. So
mhm.
first you do school, university, get married, have kids, da 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 da.
Yes.
Then you hit your
Lose
40s and go,
yourself. Spend the next 20 years trying to find the hell where you went.
that's right.
Yes.
And that,
Divorce. Yes.
and that's why we're shining the light on doing things differently.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, it's um I love history from the point of view of what has gone before, what we can learn from it, what are good things that we can take with us, and what are, oh, don't do that again. And I find that as human beings, we're very slow to learn from the past. And I think a lot of it is that we don't attach the past to our present. But I think when you listen to a past story and you allow it to actually align with where you are presently, you would see that there are an awful lot of signs that are telling you to turn back or go a different way.
That's true. That's true. And yeah, I think part of it is that awareness of where are we really? What are we fitting into? What are those stories? What's the story we're writing right now?
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm sure with, you know, like when I wrote my memoir, I'm sure the people that, you know, are writing the chapters with you, is that when they read back their chapter, you know, from what I have, when I interview authors, especially those that have written their own stories, is like, gosh, I didn't know. Why would, you know, and this was revealed to me and I had no idea. Because when you don't dictate what it's going to be, but you allow yourself to kind of discover your own journey from a almost an outside in perspective of yourself. You know, it's so revealing. And I think for so many people, it's been, I didn't know I was that strong, or I didn't know I was selling myself short in that way. And it could be quite a catalyst for them in their own lives, not just people reading it, but in their own lives to be more conscious on their choices.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I know when I did my first collaborative book, so I was just one of the authors sharing our stories, and that one was focused on emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
And at that time, I had taken myself through divorce, single mom with teenagers. I went through a complete career transition, as you mentioned in my bio. So I walked away from a 25-year career in medical genetics to get away from the toxic work environment I was in and really started that reflection about who am I and what I'm supposed to be doing next. So at that point, I felt I had something to share in that story, but it really wasn't until I got writing it and rereading it
Mm.
and it was on paper going out to the world is when it really kind of hits you, and you do see it in a
Yeah.
different light than you did while you were living it.
You see yourself in a different light because we don't give ourselves time to reflect. And what we do, which is our tendency, is immediately to go to our flaws. And, I say be flawsome. We've all got flaws. Those flaws have made us who we are, all those cracks, all those chips. Um, Perfection isn't in somebody getting through life unscathed. All the scars, all the wrinkles, they've all got a story to tell. And it's, are you still around to tell it? That's the
What have
key.
you learned?
What did you learn? We are here to learn as a human race. We are here to learn. Every experience is teaching us something. Our reaction to that experience is kind of the human experience. And I think we've kind of forgotten how to learn. Again, this expectation that you're not successful or you're not going to be happy unless. And when we go, put all of that aside and just blank slate it and look at my life, what did I learn? What did I wish I hadn't learned? What am I going to do with this knowledge?
Yes, and I think the other side of that too is the unlearning.
Yes,
So
yes.
all of those things that are stuck in our heads and those assumptions that we've been making for years or what we thought was
Hmm.
fact. And then we start listening and looking and we realize we have to unlearn some of the things that we had been stuck on so that we can relearn and get going in a different direction. And I think that that unlearning
Hmm.
is really what brings change into our life.
When the car needs an oil change or, transmission fluid and all of that, we don't bat an eyelid. I mean, when it's gasoline is empty, we don't bat an eyelid. When the computer needs to update or a phone needs to update, we understand the old programming is obsolete. There's a new program and it's going to update. But when it comes to us, we are so slow to realize that. Well, it was good enough for my mother. But was your mother happy? No. Then why was it good enough for you? You know?
Exactly, exactly.
And we're so dictated by the wrong past, by the wrong words. And we end up coming up with such a low self-esteem, a low sense of value, a believing that we can't, or the desperation to prove we can, or seeking approval from other people, that we're actually literally walking right by ourselves all the
Oh,
time.
yes. Oh,
And it's
definitely.
like, hey, turn around and take a good look at who you really are.
Yes, and going back to the book concepts too, I find it that is when we can stop and see ourselves again, when we do stop and
Mm.
either read our own chapter and just get that extra reflection back
Yeah.
on what we have been through, but also when other people read our
Hmm.
stories and then comment back to us like,
Yes.
wow, you were so brave, or you've come through so much. How did you do that?
Hmm.
And they ask us for our wisdom and they ask us to share our experience. I think that's a spot that we start reflecting back and thinking, oh, there was value in what I went
Hmm.
through. And oh, I do have something of value that will help somebody else get through similar things.
Podcast, book, movie, TV, doesn't matter what it is. When you put it out
Yes.
there, it's out there and it's completely out of your hands of how people are going to react to it. So if you are writing or you're doing anything because you're looking for the glory, the recognition, the stars, don't do it that way. Don't do it
No,
because
no.
do it from the heart, do it from the soul, do it from your story. Again, with the authors that I've interviewed, and one of them is coming up a veteran. Um, Battle of Ramaldi, and he was talking about a particular battle with all his brothers and everything else, and the price they paid and how hard it was. And it wasn't to glorify war, it was to show the brotherhood. And I
Right.
interviewed him when the book first came out, and I had re-interviewed him a little later. And he said it has warmed his heart and just embraced his soul, the impact the book has had, because he's had parents who's lost children and saying thank you because I have a better understanding what my kid went through or a better understanding of this and that. He didn't write it for that purpose. He was just
No.
sharing a story. How each person perceives that story is how it relates to their own story. And then when somebody comes up to you, something totally different to what you thought of, and it's had that impact, it's just like, wow, thank you, universe.
Yes. And it quite often is those stories that we feel are very personal and,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that was only me that went
Yeah.
through that. But then we realize that those are actually the universal stories that connect us with other people because they've gone through them too. But we didn't realize that.
We also don't realize until we either read the story or write a story that, oh boy, I thought I'd got rid of that, but I guess I'm still carrying it. The
And,
reveal.
and I think that's one of the reasons too that when I was involved in the first book that I did, I had no plans on doing more or making a habit of it.
Only 10,
But
folks, only 10 so far that are collaborative books.
and about another five in process right
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
But it wasn't until I started feeling those shifts and realizing there was a value in doing this that I started into the next one and the next one. And that's what I like about the collaborative books because they all come with a theme.
Yeah,
So we're addressing our story and our experience, but from a specific angle.
yes.
So with every different book, there's a different way of approaching that story or that experience or bringing in a different side of it that you hadn't really even thought of before.
People have book clubs, and I say to people, have a podcast club because you're listening and then you get together, nice glass of wine, cheese, whatever it is that you want to do, and then talk about what you got from it. And I'm a true colors coach. It's the four key personality traits. What did we're all going to get something different out of it according to how we perceive the information. But
Right.
when you share that, as people share what the book meant to them, people share what a podcast meant, what they got from it, suddenly, instead of just a linear picture, you have this 3D and things seem more, I can see it from that point of view. Wow, gosh, yeah. Oh my God, now that you say that. And it's another wonderful reveal that opens up. So I encourage people to pick a book amongst your girlfriends, read the chapters, do a chapter a week, come together. It's a good excuse to have a wine evening and then talk about what that chapter, what that story did. That expands not only on the story told, but it expands on the story heard.
Yes. And I think too, the same person reading that
Mm.
story will see something different in it
Yes.
at different times in their life. And
Yes.
that old line that when the student is ready, the
Yeah.
teacher appears. Well, the teacher was always there,
Yeah.
but the student wasn't ready or they weren't looking for that thing
Couldn't
yet.
see them and even in front of
Whereas,
them, right?
because I
Yeah.
mean, I've got so many books like with Brene Brown and
Mhm.
wonderful writers like that, and every time I go back to her books, I get something different out of
Yeah.
it.
According to where you are now. I love, these books that are kind of short and sweet or the chapters and I go, what do I need to know? And I open up the book.
Yes, I do
Right.
that
And you and
too.
you, it's either that chapter or that statement or that something you go, ah, yeah, okay, thank you. But that's the thing about a book. It's a gift that keeps on giving. You can revisit it and it's a totally different story, right? Or you can share it with someone else. And of course, especially, with books like when you're reading with children. I have the 25-month-old grandson now and a newborn grandson. And when you're reading to him, and when I do authors of kids' books, and you listen to the stories and you read the books, and it's like the kids are getting this message, but it's a re-education for the parents or the grandparents on the message, right? And I mean, that's what's so beautiful about it. There are some wonderful reminders in stories. I have been ignoring that for so long. I didn't know I was doing that. I put that off for so long, and I think it's time for me to do it. And that sometimes that gentle reminder that comes in one of those chapters.
Exactly. And it's funny with children's books as well, because so many of them are written in a way that there's two different stories going on.
Yes,
There's the one that the kids understand, and then there's the other level there where only the parents are understanding that side of it, even though it's the same story. They're reading the same words,
yes.
but from their perspective, they
Hmm.
are seeing a whole different message.
Yeah, one of those books is the Philip Pullman, The Golden Compass, as it's known in North America. It's known as Northern Lights in England, and it's a trilogy, and it was written for youth genre. And I remember reading it the end of the 90s, going into the millennial. And for me, it was just a wonderful revolution because it was the characters have animals that constantly keep changing until they reach puberty. And then at puberty, it becomes the animal that represents them, their character, their true personality.
Oh,
But that animal is their consciousness. Right. So that consciousness is
yeah.
always speaking to you. Instead of us having to be quiet and listen to our consciousness, that consciousness is there, present. And I wish. And it's interesting because they then did a TV series called Dark Materials, which I highly recommend. It's brilliantly done. And it's actually been favored more by adults of all
Okay.
ages than necessarily the youth, although it was written for the youth genre. Youth will get one thing out of it, but the amount of adults that have looked at it and go, yep, I relate. So it doesn't
Um,
matter, if you think that your chapter is just a frivolous, wonderful story. It doesn't all have to be heavy and painful or anything like this. It could be just a wonderful experience that you had or a goofy experience that you had. It doesn't matter as long as it's honest and true to who you are.
yes, and that's one of the reasons too that I always like to focus my books on themes that
Mm,
especially midlife women would want to write about and read about. And like my first one in January this year, Embrace Courage. It was all stories of people sharing times in their life when they've had to embrace courage to move forward through something. And again, it could be any kind of story. Some of them were very heartbreaking stories. Some of them were stories around people just making big decisions to change their career or to walk away from a relationship, or but there's so many different examples that again different people would take it so differently. Well, I think your sound is gone.
yeah, sorry, there was an airplane going over, so I muted it. I don't think we realize how much strength, how much tenacity, how much resilience, or how much courage we really have. It's only when we're tested and we've got
Yes.
to dig deep, or we've got to face something in the now, or we've got to go through something and find that strength and courage to do it. And then when you're through it and you look back, and I do too now, if I'm caught up in something that I feel is pulling me down and I feel I can't move forward and go, hang on, let's look back a year, let's look back 5 years, let's look back 10, 20 years. Do you remember where you were then? Well, look how far you are now. This is just a temporary pause for you to collect yourself in order to move on.
And you got through all those things, so
Yep,
you can get through this too.
exactly. Because it's not just about the inspiration and sharing the story, you're sharing the skills and the
Yes.
ability of how you got through it. What did you do? And, so many people, and I'm sure you found this as well, that once they're through it, it's become their calling, it's their meaningful purpose. And now
Yes.
they've developed programs or skills or tools that they can teach others how to use on their journey of life because they created those school tools or they found those tools along the way that worked for them. And I think they're the best kind of tools and skills to hand on because they have been first-handedly discovered.
Yes. Discovered to be useful
Yeah.
and applicable and
Yes. Yes. I think we do prefer to, you have those books that are all about instructor. Now you should do it this way, you've got to do it that way. And it does feel rather like the teacher in the classroom treating everybody the same and everybody's got to go through the same process. And it's like, but are you not talking to me? I don't, I see the words you're saying, but I don't feel anything in the words. And then you read a story from somebody who has actually gone through something and you can feel the emotion, the everything. And then it's like, yeah, now I hear it. Now I
Yeah.
see it. It
And you
really
can
is a difference.
listen,
Yeah.
listen to the instructions from someone who's been there
Yes.
much more easily than someone who's just teaching it off a page.
Right. Most certainly. I watch these talent shows and you've got a singer and they say technically perfect, perfect pitch, but where's the feeling? And then you've got somebody who comes out that cracks in the middle of it or goes off key, but the emotion is so provoking that everybody's in tears. I want that experience.
Yes,
I want something that
exactly.
moves me. We're very capable of moving each other,
Oh,
very
definitely.
capable, but we've
Yes.
become shy of feeling, oh, it's not my place, it's only somebody's famous place, Oprah or the Wayne Dryers or the Jay Shetty. It's only them that can do it. Who am I?
Yes.
You're a person who's had lifelong experience. You are more than qualified to talk about that experience.
Yes. And I think that does hold back a lot of people that do
Mm.
have a vision of stepping in and being that supportive person, and those feelings of, well, who are you? You're not, like you say, you're not Oprah, so who are you to think you can help somebody with a situation or inspire somebody?
Hmm.
But we
Exactly.
we have to get through that, get past that, and recognize that we all have stories and wisdom that can
Every
support other
single
people.
one of us. And I really don't care if it's a small story of just something that happened to you, or if it's a big story. It don't compare, don't compete. Your story is your story. It's significant to you, and it'll be significant to the person that gets moved by it. Just because somebody else's story may be a little darker or deeper, or they maybe had to climb out of that Grand Canyon a few times, it isn't about comparison. Well, they suffered more than me, and I won't be very. It's not about that, is it? Not about that.
And even with the books that I'm doing, I usually have about 20 women per book telling their stories. And quite often I have them asking me, oh, what are the others writing about? Or what if we have the same story or things like that? And I just like to stop them right
Yeah.
there that, you know what, even if you had a similar experience, your story is different.
Yes.
And as soon as they start comparing what
Mm,
somebody else's story is and feeling like you said, oh, mine isn't that important, or mine's not that shocking, or mine's not, I should just get over mine, and
mm.
it's not that big a deal anymore. It's like, no, I don't even like them to hear each other's stories until they've got a good first draft ready,
I agree.
because to avoid that whole thing of comparing and over analyzing, just put your story on paper and
My brother
it
is a
will.
professional writer, and he also taught literature at the master's degree level. And so when I wrote my book, he volunteered to start editing it for me. Unfortunately, he only got halfway before he had a heart attack and didn't get any further. I was expecting him, because yes, I do have dyslexia and grammar and spelling is awful for me. And I did expect him to come back and say, well, you can't say this, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. And I was actually quite shocked. Like, apart from the grammar and changing a sentence here and there, he was embracing what I had to say.
Oh,
And I
good.
went, what? Because I used to write for his site, and mine is very much kind of run on sentence because I speak in flow and I write in flow. And of course, he's the literary, master's guy with
Yes.
talking about structure. And he would rewrite it. And I said, please don't. Correct, but don't rewrite. So he left it. And then he'd be, how come all these people are commenting and wanting to reach out to you? Because I said, I'm speaking their language.
Yes.
Right? I'm speaking their language. And it's like, it isn't about the perfection. You've got that down. In fact, I'm just speaking from the heart, and it's the heart they're picking up.
And that's the other tip I give to my authors as well, that write it as if you're talking to somebody at the
Yeah.
coffee table.
Yeah.
Write it as if you're just sitting together having a conversation. And so, yes, do not worry about those rules around
Mm.
sentences, And I mean, obviously we need to make it so it's legible and
Readable, yes.
readable,
And that could
but
be done after, but
but that more
get the content
casual
down. Yeah.
flow of
Mm,
just that
yes.
conversation, because that's what draws people in and makes them feel connected.
But at the same time, it invites them to have their own conversations. If you've
Yes,
written in a
that's true.
conversational flow, they pick up that conversational thread and more willing to talk to other people about it
Yeah,
instead of feeling, well, that's their journey, this is mine, and there's a detachment. It becomes more an invitation to be a part of the conversation.
yeah, that's a very good point.
We all want to be part of the conversation because we feel for so long we've been left out, right? So you've got two books of your own that are your own, Embrace Courage and The Landscape of Science and Tech. And you have a new one coming out in June as well. So tell us about these books, because these aren't part of the 10 books you've been a collaborator of. These are your own.
Yes, so they're all collaborative books. And so these three that we've just mentioned now are ones that I am the creator of.
Mm-hmm.
So I have created the title, the theme, I've brought together the team of authors, I help coach them around those steps of putting their story on paper, getting a good draft. And so they've all been themes that come to me as what I hear women talking about,
Yeah.
that they want to connect over.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea around midlife and the stages we go through and a lot of the transformations and the challenges that we go through are big things that I like to focus on. Right now, the new books that I'm just creating now and bringing new authors into, I'm focusing them on how women are transforming leadership. So
Yes.
leadership in business, leadership in community,
Mm-hmm.
leadership in the science and tech community,
Mm-hmm.
because women in general, we're bringing a different flavor to leadership as we step into it. So more around collaboration and mentorship, just working together, listening to each other, working as a team.
And less ego.
And that hierarchy, no
Yes.
hierarchy, like let's get rid of the
Yeah.
hierarchy. Let's just create an environment where everyone feels safe to share their thoughts and contribute and how things are working and what might make it better. But so that's where I'm focusing right now with my new books that I'm just creating, is on that leadership model.
I love that
And
because
and
women
and
have stepped into leadership. And, you know, you've got people like, you know, DeSantis and a few others that want to put women back, you know, barefoot and pregnant, or Handmaiden's Tale. I think he watched the
I
series and got
know.
an idea, you know. And it's like, you know, I'm sorry, gentlemen out there, we're out of the womb and you can't put the baby back. You know, we have stepped into our own empowerment. We are very, very capable of doing things ourselves. We don't need your permission. And if you wish to collaborate with us on any equal setting, great, but we certainly don't need your dictation. And you're finding more and more women now stepping up into all industries. And it's like, how many women have I interviewed in the corporate, from the corporate world, saying, I was just so tired of being overlooked or so tired of being treated this way or that way. I created my own business and it's all women,
Exactly.
or men that love women and not want to
Yeah.
support them. Uh, it's like, let's just get over yourselves. You know, women who thought I have to wear a suit in the business world to, you know, be equal to a man. No, you are a woman. Be your womanhood. That's what sets you apart. Your whole thinking, your whole approach, your whole everything. You don't have to put on the suit to make an impression. You know, don't come in with the sexy G-string and all of that. No, but you can dress the woman, but be the woman that you are, because that's where your empowerment is.
And the whole conversation around diversity,
Yeah.
inclusion,
Yes.
equity, and the all the conversations these days as well around neurodivergence
Mm,
and how different ways of approaching things create a whole different solution. Whereas, before it was like, well, if you don't do it this way, then you're wrong. Now we're
yes.
starting to accept, well, you know what? There are different ways of doing it. There are different ways of looking at it. There's different ways of approaching a situation and a problem. And so just the idea that we are allowing and opening
Mm,
space for all these different ways of approaching things and different opinions, different perspectives, different histories of how people are all these filters that we apply to every minute of our life. Well, we all have different filters, we all have different experiences, and we have to be welcoming all of those different parts to come together.
You're 100% right. And it's funny you should go neurodivergent because I've just had Dr. Joanne White, and that was the entire topic was the
Oh.
neurodivergency. It was around that um, she was dyslexic and other things I was too. And it's how we couldn't be taught in the same way. We're made to feel less, we're made to feel wrong. And it is that when we could get over that and say, look, it's not just one way of the highway, it's a diverse way. And when we look at all that diversity, then we realize that each person is a gift that is a contributor. I draw the analogy of the orchestra. We are all in discovery of what our own instrument is. It's up
Mm,
to us to learn to play it well, but we can actually
right.
be a soloist. But when we come together in the orchestra, each in our own strength, decide to play harmoniously together, we are transcending as a
Yes,
group, right?
I like that.
And when you're doing that with your books, you're bringing each
That's,
of
yeah,
those instruments together and they're transcending collectively together.
yeah, exactly. And I'm also dyslexic,
Mm-hmm.
and I find one of my biggest strengths is my ability to see things in a bigger picture.
Yes.
That I don't look at things in little bits. I
Yes.
see them like a web and a
Yeah.
bigger. And I think that's where the books come from, and especially the collaborative books, because I can see that bigger picture of what I want to bring together. And then I bring people together that are doing those smaller pieces of it. But my
Exactly.
piece is that bigger, that and of course those that aren't
Canvas.
on the in our spectrum of neurodivergence, it's hard to describe,
Yeah.
but that is how I think. I think in bigger webs
Mm-hmm.
and not in straight lines.
I can't walk a straight line. Literally, I have balance issues. Do not try. I'm an air sign. Do not try and box me or contain me. And the moment I feel restrained, I feel like I'm withering. So yes, and we've got to understand if we were all meant to be the same, we'd be humanoids, just droids,
And how
right?
boring would that be?
I mean, yeah, we would not have evolved beyond the first stages because
No,
it is
no.
our differences and it's the needs of what we need in order to survive that brings out our creativity. And so, when I interview an awful lot of autistic people, and it's wonderful to see what they have done. And there's something beautiful about what I see. They're very focused on the gift that they have. They're very good at the gift. They have a small circle of friends, and they're very selective who they let in their world. And I think there is a lesson to be learned here. Definitely. I mean, one of them has just become a father this week, and I was just so proud of him. And he's a DJ, he's a postman, um, and he knows he has those struggles. But at the same time, it's like I understand I have these struggles, but those are things I have. It's not who I am.
Very good point. And that's
Very
just
good
what makes
point.
us different.
Yes, exactly. And my young grandson has Down syndrome. So right now it's learning all I can about that and it's different for each child. And we're just going to learn and discover with him as he grows. And it's exciting to see that. What is going to be his better response to things? What is going to be his gift? And I think one of the things we do so wrong for our children is that we don't encourage the gift they are or the gift that they have. We put them into school or religions or various other things, conform, conform, conform. You are not worthy unless you conform. And that is, I think, killing us as human beings because we're not meant to conform, right? We're meant to collaborate,
Be
right?
creative
Be creative,
and try new things.
try new things, be cohesive, but it's not about conformity as it
Right.
isn't about comparison or competition.
No, I agree. And then, like you say, when you watch small children,
Mm,
they're always kind of pushing the limits and thinking, oh,
yeah,
how would if I do this? And how would
yeah.
if I do that? Will this work? And what will happen if I do that?
Hmm.
And they're just curious and always expanding,
Yes.
always looking to learn, like you
Yeah.
were saying earlier, that what else can I learn from this situation?
But it's also what can we learn by watching them? Being a
Yes.
grandparent is very different to being a parent because with a parent, you're on 24/7. The next meal, the this, the that, etc. But being a grandparent, I can kind of be more, I don't know, I haven't got that burden of, the rest of his life. So I can get in there and savor him and where he's at. And he loves to play with his cars and he goes very methodical and he's got a drive that he does. And I watch his little eyes and his face kind of talking to himself. And it's just, he could be immersed in that for a good 45 minutes on his own little journey. And it's like, this is something else I think we are inclined to overstimulate our children, that they don't know how to be at one with themselves.
Mm.
And please do not introduce the phone or the tablet to them as babies. It literally does destroy their neurons and their creative thinking, and really is in some ways is considered even a form of torture.
Oh, well, it definitely, yeah, it gets in the way of them just exploring and
Yes.
being curious on a more basic level.
Yeah.
To need to be entertained by flashy things.
That's
We need
hence the
to.
torture, literally what it does, because it's programming them to what they're seeing all the time. Right. And the various tortures use that technique as well. So we've got to be
That's
very
right.
mindful. It doesn't mean they can't do it now and again, but don't use the tablet or the phone as a replacement for actual parenting. Right. Um, my little grandson, I don't know how many books he's got. I bought him stacks, and his dad keeps buying him stacks. And the other day we got up at 6 in the morning when the parents were away on a medical with the baby. And it's like immediately I had to read 6 books. Yeah, my eyes aren't open yet. Come on, Nana. Straight off.
Like,
But
what's
it's great.
next?
It's great that he's got that interest, right? And we need to nurture that. Nurture your children's exploration, because I think one of the things we've lost as adults is that exploration of life. Now, in your opening statement of, what you were talking about there, I'm going to get back to your show page here to where are you? When you mentioned that we are not, bring life back to your life. And part of that life is just the willing to experience life, explore life, immerse yourself in life. We've forgotten how to do that.
Yes. Yes. And I often use the word reignite. So
Mm-hmm,
reignite your life.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And to me that kind of sums it up, that we've lost that spark. We've lost that, yeah, that curiosity, that excitement, that looking for what's different and fun, and yeah, so reignite.
I live with a woman who's about to turn 90. She
Mm.
still drives. She's physically fitter than I am. She lives on salt and sugar. The two things that are meant to be deadly for you. Um, she's as stubborn as a mule. She's still a black belt. Uh,
Wow.
yes, short-term memory is going, definitely, but she has an exuberance for the simple things in life. Going off to Timmy's for a coffee and a pastry, going the walker front so you can pat all the dogs going along. It's simple things that she loves. And I think it's in a lot of ways, it's been a great reminder to enjoy the moments in life. There's just simple moments in life and stop taking everything so heavy as a burden.
Yes. And I think the world that we're in right now, like we were saying earlier, tends to focus on all those heavy things.
Yes.
So we really have to consciously look for the things that are lighter, funner, more just that basic level inspiration and excitement.
Do you want to list all the names of the books you've been in? I've got them all here in front of
Let's
me.
see. I think I'll actually have to pull up my website to be able to list them all again. 1 second here. So
Well,
I
while
know
you're
the
doing that, I can
first.
start. You've got the women
Yeah. So if
transforming
I.
the landscape of technology. And of course, there's the Invincible Forever more, the book I read, Embracing Courage, the 365, Business Life and universe. I may be reading that wrong because I can't read the tiny writing.
Well, that particular group, what they do is they have different books come out regularly,
Hmm.
but rather than picking a theme, they have all of the books are themed around business, life, and the universe.
Right.
And then people just share their stories that could fit into any of those.
Hmm. Great. And the other one that I'm seeing here now is Woman of Worth, stories of purpose, passion, power for extraordinary era.
Yeah,
So,
so there's three books that I did with the WOW group, so the Women of Worth group. So the first one I did was the emotional intelligence, mental health matters. And
hmm
after that, we did then it was when COVID hit and everything was focusing around that. So the
hmm
next one was 16 Women Who Thrived Through Turbulent Times.
hmm
And then the pandemic stories of purpose and passion getting through the extraordinary era. And yeah, so they've all been ones with different themes,
hmm
different ways of looking at the story, different sides of the story, and it's actually been quite an interesting adventure. So the one in this business life and universe, my story, my chapter there, I actually did a comparison with the transformation of a butterfly, so the
hmm
metamorphosis of a butterfly, comparing that with the metamorphosis of someone leaving corporate and going into entrepreneur life.
hmm
So comparing that egg with that corporate person sitting there with all this potential and not using it. And then they go into that caterpillar stage where they're just
hmm
gobbling up all this information, everything they can. And anyone who's stepped into being an entrepreneur will understand that part of just
The
learning,
many
absorbing,
hats.
grabbing.
Yes.
And then taking it into that, the butter or the caterpillar goes into the cocoon
Yes.
stage. And what a lot of people don't realize is that caterpillar is actually going through a meltdown to almost
Mm-hmm.
liquid and then being recreated into the butterfly out of almost nothing, just like a soup, and then becomes the butterfly and is able to fly away. And so really kind of bringing home with that as we go into this entrepreneurial way of being, part of that is melting down that old self.
And
It,
getting rid of
all of
anything that you're not going to take with you, right? If you've just
exactly.
soup-defined it,
Yeah,
so
to
there's
be able
no
to
one
step
trauma or
into
no one
that.
drama or anything else. It's just
Yeah,
resurfaced or repurposed,
and it
right?
really
What
is a
is
whole
really
new
important.
identity.
Exactly. And like, woo, look, I have wings, I can fly. Right? I don't have to slug along anymore. So it's exciting if you're willing to go through the process. So I really love you did that analogy of it because, it's like we don't know if the caterpillar is suffering during that liquefying times before it becomes the butterfly. We don't know. I often
Yeah,
draw the analogy of giving birth to ourselves. And very often, that 9 month gestation of rediscovery, of redefining, of redirecting, and then literally giving birth to ourselves can be painful. But then that new birth of who we are, this is nobody else has got the paintbrush this time. We have, it's our blank canvas. We can put on that canvas what we want, and that's
yeah,
exciting.
exactly. So every one of those books just takes things from a different angle
Mm.
and sort of rearranges the focus, the way I'm looking at it, different pieces that I'm bringing into it. And that's why I just love doing more and more and different books. And that collection of books that I have so far, I've worked with 7 different publishing groups now.
Mm-hmm.
So each one of those publishing groups has a different way of approaching things, a different community that they're bringing together, because that's another part that I love about the collaborative books. So you're
Yes.
meeting and connecting with a whole new network of people,
Lovely
quite often
spider
that you
web.
never would
Mm.
have met. My books
Exactly.
that I'm putting together are all an international group of women
Mm.
involved in them. So all of those authors are now meeting all of these other
Mm.
networks all over the world.
Yeah.
And so it really is an amazing way to both connect, build your own connections, but even just amplify your message on a whole bigger scale.
Exactly. And that's the thing is like a lot of people, I don't know if I've literally interviewed people, oh yeah, I've got 15 books or 20 books under my thing and they're whole books. And obviously they must write in their sleep because I mean, it's not the writing. I did that in 3 weeks. It's all the editing and everything else, the process, right?
Yeah.
That takes the time. But not everybody can churn them out like that. Not everybody has got that in them. Even my brother, who's a professional writer, he'll take months, going through the processes of the books, and even you'll put it down for a while, ignore it, come back, re-edit
Yes,
it,
yes,
right,
yeah,
to revisit it. But the way to do it, if you want to get out, it's just like people, why they do podcasts is to get their story out, to
yeah,
invite people into their world. Well, that's what the chapter does. It invites people to get to know you, even if it's from that one perspective, and kind of have a flavor of you. And yes, you could inspire them, but maybe you are doing something that you're inviting them into the world that can help you or that you want
yes,
to be a part of. And that's the beauty of being a part of a collaborative book. It's not all on you to just get the whole book out. It's that collaboration, that community, and that invitation that's going out
yeah.
to everyone.
And all of the books that I create, I connect with a nonprofit group that's a good alignment with the theme.
Hmm.
And all of the Amazon proceeds go directly to that nonprofit group. So rather than, for one thing, for some reason, people have the idea that writing a book, you're going to make a lot of money from
J.K.
selling your
Rowling,
book.
yeah, you're going to be the billionaire,
Most
right?
people do not make money on their books,
No.
and especially a collaborative book when you've got 20 authors
Yes.
involved. We'd be looking at sending $20 here, $10
No.
there. It just doesn't make sense. So that's why we connect with a nonprofit group. We Again, we're connecting the authors with that
Mm.
nonprofit group, so it's amplifying the work they're doing,
Hmm.
and it just makes it simple. The proceeds from the book go to that group,
I love it.
amplify the work that they're doing.
Exactly, and support that's reaching out. I'm doing something a little similar with the books because I've got the Forgotten Children series that's going to be coming out next, and I have a program called the Fund Action, and it's where we will substitute the mentors that we have there, and each one of the authors also becomes a mentor. We subsidize rather their services for people in need. So they become a part of that. But from the proceeds of the book, it goes into supporting the organizations that they're supporting.
Oh,
And many of
perfect.
them have already, you have the comfort cases guy. He was a foster child. And 40 years later, when he decided to foster children, he thought, my God, they're coming with their goods in a plastic bag. That was me 40 years ago. And he started bringing in cases for them and in suitcases. And he ended up at Ellen
Yeah.
DeGeneres. He ended up on Sesame Street. He ended up at the White House. And now it's a huge, big
Oh,
concern. And I
wow.
interviewed him way back. I mean, what this guy went through as with his own family, never mind foster, but who he became because of that journey and what he's doing now. And that's they're my favorite stories when people through experiencing something, seeing the need of what others need, and then stepping up and creating it. And so I'm very happy
Yes.
to support all these organizations. I can't do it out of my own pocket, but the books I hope will be the ones to support them. And so it will be equally shared amongst the authors in each of the book of their organizations.
I love it.
But that's the way, that's keeping the circle going, isn't it? As you said, it's not about the books and making the money out of that. Um, Cover costs, obviously, but it's about making sure that the story does keep on going, that the benefit keeps on going, that it's not just a story put down and forgotten, that that it carries on being told one way or the other because of the support that it's providing. And I think that's wonderful.
Yes, exactly. And I think as well, whether it's in electronic format or
Yes.
whether it's a paper copy, you never know who's going to stumble upon it.
When the
So
teacher,
10
you're
years
right, when the
from
student's
now,
ready.
yeah,
Exactly,
exactly.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
who's going to pick it up and what message are they going to get?
And you've got people that, I read that book 20 years ago, and then they reread it and go, oh, now I get it.
It's a whole different book.
That's the thing. That's why a book keeps on giving, because you could read it 6 months down the road and it's like you've got something else out of it. And I
Yes.
think that's the beauty of it. And that's the beauty of a book is the fact that it does keep on giving. And it's just wherever you're at, you're going to see it from that point of view.
Exactly.
And that story is going to change, which is, great and exciting. Now, if somebody wants to be a part of these books, what kind of people are you looking for? And, how do they qualify to be a part of them?
Mainly looking for midlife women, or I guess that's whatever age you describe that as, and women that fit
40
into the
plus?
theme. Yeah. So women that fit the theme of the book. So say
Right.
we're looking at the women transforming business leadership. So for that one, it'd be women that have some experience in
Mhm,
leadership through business and community, what they've done, what their perspective is, what lessons they've learned, kind of looking at strategies
mhm,
and their own wisdom. And really and quite often people will say, well, I've never done this before. I'm not a very good writer, and just not to worry about that, because I even have a ghostwriter that we can go to if we need the complete thing written, or I work with the authors one-on-one and we go back and forth with drafts and
mhm.
conversations around developing the chapter and what their message is that they're trying to get out. So I would say really any woman who is wanting to become a writer, who wants to put their story out into the world and connect with a wider audience, build their global community, definitely connect with me. Let's have a conversation. Go from there. I always have new books coming up as well. So I
Do you have
also
a
have
have
ones.
a next theme, or maybe that you haven't filled yet? Have you got some themes you can share?
So besides the leadership books, I've also got a book focused on grief. So the different
Mm,
layers and
mm,
shades of grief.
mhm,
And that will be both experts in the field of grief, sharing some of their tools, but also people that have experienced different kinds of grief and how they've coped with it. Another one is around overcoming the barriers to success, things like imposter syndrome, mindset. And again, there'll be a combination of people that are experts in those fields, plus people sharing their stories of getting through those things, what their experience has been. And going forward, I've got a lot of other new ideas coming up. So things around community of breast cancer
mhm,
survivors, Indigenous women in science and tech. We've got a new one that we're just starting to work on, focused on patient advocacy, especially
mhm.
around seniors and people that are experts in those fields, talking about that. So really, I like to kind of put it out there that we can create a book around almost any theme.
Yes.
That the main ideas are that they have to be positive, inspiring, motivational, that kind of energy into the book. But
Yeah.
beyond that, we can
From the
really.
struggles become the butterfly, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And even for a lot of different organizations, we can create a book that is focused on
Mm,
the organization. So now it becomes a promotional piece for that organization and is
right.
filled with their members creating the stories. So there's so many
Perfect.
things we can do with it.
Yeah,
So
I love that idea. I was talking the other day about organizations setting up their own podcasts, in-house podcasts,
mhm.
where everybody can get a chance to be interviewed and share their stories and things like this, and humanizing it,
Yes, yes, yes.
communityizing it. And like with having a book like that, again, janitor up, everybody sharing a story around a particular theme of the business. What has this company meant to me?
Yeah,
Where was I before? Why am I here? All of those type of things. And we learn from each other. We always have learned better from each other's stories since the beginning of time. And
oh,
it
definitely.
that
Yeah.
doesn't matter how we're doing it now. The story needs to be shared. And through that story being shared, that's how we grow as an individual and how we
Oh,
come
I agree.
together as a community, right? It really is building that spider's web where everybody is coming together and we're all part of one. And that is something that's so important, being a part of that collective.
Yes, and finding that common ground and common experience.
Yeah. And there's a lot more in common, folks, than there is against. It's this ridiculousness, that I can't remember who it is. It's a famous woman. She's been on many shows and she was on the Red Round Table and we're talking about Black adversity. And she was talking about race and, black race, white race. And she said, no, human race. And we are all part of the human race, and we just like a box of chocolates. We just come in different flavors. We have different experiences and different cultures. And instead of being afraid of them, why can't we learn from each of them and just realize like, oh, that's an exciting culture. I'd like to experience that. Or that's exciting. And, oh, no, culture isn't for me. But if the whole point is stop closing yourself off. Open yourself up, be willing to learn, be willing to explore, be wondrous. And a book is a great way to do that. And the beauty of what you've done, one story at a time, savor it, devour it, talk about it, and then you go back to another story. Right? You don't have to read the whole book at once. In fact, I don't recommend it. Savor each
No, yeah.
story, right? And then go back in for the next one. Or maybe you want to jump to chapter 6 first because that one is of interest. You can go back to 4. There is no rules. And that's the thing of it. But savor it. Savor it because we've forgotten how to have joy in life, folks.
Yes, and the fun part too is that the books all have connection information for each author.
Lovely.
So if you do read a story and you really connect with it or you want to learn more, the contact information is right there for that author.
Wonderful. And there, that opens that door of that invitation to want to know more, to
Exactly.
get to know, oh God, you're speaking my language. Can we have a chat?
Yeah.
You know, all of that. It connects, it connects, it connects. And I love the connection. Wonderful. So people want to reach out to you, want to be a part of this. Where do they go, love? How do they do that?
Well, as far as social media goes, LinkedIn is where I hang out the most. So
Mhm.
finding me there works. The easiest way is through my website. So my website is just inspiredtenacity.com. And on there, you'll find buttons to see all my current books that are out, all my new projects that are up, and all sorts of other interesting things that I know that my community loves to see. So that's the best way to connect with me. And there's buttons on there for booking a meeting time. So it puts you right into my calendar to book a Zoom or a phone conversation, which is really handy. And then it's also got links to my email address and things like that. So yes,
And
simplest, inspiredtenacity.com.
exactly. And and I want people, to come back to selfdiscoverywisdom.com and just put in her name, which is very, very easy. Cathy, Cathy, Derksen, Derksen. You have to be pronounced on the spelling, unfortunately. But go to her show page and look at her own story here. We didn't even cover that. All the things that she's been through, a family involved in a fatal car accident, and just all of these little things that was a part of pivoting and changing and pushing her forward in life. She talked about divorce. Yes, we throw divorce around like, yeah, I got divorced, like we changed our underwear, but it has an impact on our lives. It changes our lives. So Cathy's got a story here too, which is told in part through various chapters in these other books. So but come and look at her show page and read all about her there as well. I love what you're
Yeah.
doing. When we met on that network and what you were saying and doing, I love anybody who does collaborations. I love anyone who brings people together because that is something we desperately need as a human race. And we celebrate each other through each other's stories. And, not every story is going to relate to you. And it's like a very nice story, but not one that hit me. And then another one is going to be one with you're saying my life, and that's okay. That is okay. It is about where the connections are, and you're not going to find them unless you pick up the books. And you're not going to be able to share your story unless you want to participate in being a part of a book or part of a story in some way. Don't hold it back, please. Your life experience is something that's going to be illuminating for someone else. Don't hold it back, please.
And
So,
one of the tabs too is my gift page. So I think we'll be
mhm,
sharing my gift page as well in the notes here. But on my website, there's a tab that's for my gifts. And that includes booking a complimentary hour chit
mhm,
chat with me. Plus, there are the final versions of a couple of my books on there as PDF versions that you can just download for free. And then you'll see the examples of the kinds of stories and the different books have.
wonderful. Inspiredtenacity.com. Look it up. Be willing to buy the books, be willing to say, you know what, I've got a story to tell and I want to be a part of this. This is the way things are going, folks. It used to be the publisher, you had to beg to be published. Now there are the independents like Cathy, who's willing to share your story collaboratively together, which therefore isn't all the onus on you as well. It is teamwork. Go and do it. Just go and do it. And you don't know where to start? Start reading them. Start reading them. And through the reading of them, you will realize, you know what? I have a story to share too.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Cathy. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I look forward to connecting with the audience.
Definitely. Books, read. No headliners. You know, it is about make yourself comfortable, put your feet up, a glass of wine, a cup of coffee out on the deck somewhere, on the beach, whatever, and just read. And then talk about what you've read, feel it, devour it, savor it, and then, you know, share it, and then be anxious to read the next one. I promise you, it will have a positive impact on your life, but you have got to be the participant in buying the books, opening up the page, reading it, and savoring it. That's the only way the change can happen. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tab at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.